Works or whatever, GameStop. Yep,
and
all
Tesla.
those. Thanks for rubbing it in, Mark. I won't make any more jokes about your eye. Sorry.
It looks like we are now live streaming.
Okay, we're going. We're
Okay,
good.
we're set?
Yep.
All
Sorry.
right.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, folks, we'll get started here. If you're watching on the YouTube or the live stream, sorry for the technical difficulties. Hopefully we've got that squared away now. Want to welcome you all to a presentation tonight about the Marina Master Plan progress, and specifically kind of a report from the Wagner Group on the Phase 2 report tonight. We have a number of folks here with us. I'm Dan Brewer, the Chief Operations Officer with the city. We've got our Harbor Master, Scott Wilkins, our Associate Harbor Master, Katie. We've got some representatives from the DMMA here with us tonight, and obviously our folks from the Wagner Group. So we'll get started with the presentation.
Okay.
So let's see here. All right. So our purpose tonight, again, just real briefly, we want to provide an update on the Marina Master Plan work that the city's been working on. We're going to spend a specific amount of time looking at the Phase 2 report. Mark Bunzel will give a presentation on that. And we will also respond to some initial questions and comments that we've gotten. We won't be able to respond to all of them tonight, but we will be responding to all the questions you have and comments that you make. We'll provide a document on the Marina web page going forward where we'll respond to those. So I want to keep encouraging you, if you have questions or comments, to send those in to us. And then at the end, I'll also kind of review with you the next steps and what's coming up on the schedule for the master plan update. One of the questions that we've gotten over the last several weeks is, what exactly is the master plan? There's some confusion about exactly what that is. So I wanted to spend a couple minutes talking about that. Our master plan is a long-range planning tool. All of our departments at the city have a master plan of some sort, with the idea of looking at setting goals and visions and action plans for the next 20 years of capital investment and operational needs. It's just that it's really a long-range vision document. And so one of the things that we'll try to do fairly frequently is update that master plan. We try to tune it up every 5 years or so, so we can make adjustments as we go. So as we complete this particular master planning process, really what it's doing is it's taking a look at our best shot at what we think the future of boating is for the marina, and it'll allow us to take the first few steps in that direction. And then down the road, we will tune that vision up to make sure that the assumptions that we've made in the master plan are still accurate. And so we can adjust as we go. We always want to have a plan that looks 20 years in the future. So we do a full update about every 10 years to our master planning documents. Once the master plan is finished, it'll eventually be included as part of the city's comprehensive plan, as part of that overall city visioning document. One of the best things that the master plan allows the city to do is it really establishes the basis for our capital reinvestments, or our Marina Improvement Plan. This Marina Improvement Plan is a 6-year capital investment planning tool where we list out all of the capital projects in the marina. So the master plan establishes the basis for the initial plan. And then every year in the budgeting process, that improvement plan will get reviewed and updated. And it allows a process to reassess and adjust priorities and project scopes. And so that's something that can happen every year. And that document and that work will typically occur in the late spring. And that work directly feeds into the annual capital improvement budget process for the city and for the marina. So it really helped prioritize and shape the investments that the city and the marina are making. So the master plan work, we've already accomplished a lot over the last couple of years. You know, we had hoped to actually do the master planning update in 2020, but when COVID hit, that really put a damper on our ability to get that work done. So we put a pause on that while we were dealing with that. But even before that, we have accomplished a lot. We've had a lot of community outreach. Mark has completed his phase 1 report some time ago, and we had presentations to the DMMA. We also had a stakeholder meeting with the tenants at the senior center with that. And tonight we're going through his phase 2 report. We've also done some visioning for the waterfront through Makers, and the Holmes group with Robert Holmes has done quite a bit of work on the land side, working on the interface between the city and the marina and that harbor steps or the marina steps. We've had a lot of visioning work that we've done on the Argosy cruise ship and at the yacht club. We had probably a half a dozen council briefings on that over the last several years. We've also done some studies and looking at potential for passenger-only ferry service. We contracted with some folks to help us do a viability study on that, and we coordinated with PSRC on the likelihood of passenger ferry service being successful at Des Moines. And Peter Phillips, we've been working with him and Bruce Agnew and others on that, and that work is ongoing. We've also done some geotechnical work at the base of the hill. We have KPFF helped us with that. More recently, we did complete a condition assessment report. I'll talk about that briefly. And also, we're preparing to issue some requests for qualifications on some capital work, and we'll talk about that a little bit tonight on some dock replacements. And then you'll hear tonight about an adaptive purpose building. We want to start working towards that, and then some of the work that the city's done on the marina steps as well. So we've been working so far in 2020. We've had a number of meetings with our municipal facility committee and our city council. We've looked at exactly what is the marina. We've defined the zones for the council and the committee. We've looked at that condition assessment report, and we've begun to draw some preliminary conclusions about at least a draft priority of some projects based on that. Last month, we introduced 4 policy questions or 4 policy issues to the committee. That was dealing with covered moorage, slip sizes, dry stack storage, and reconstruction of the dry sheds. We haven't made any decisions yet or anything like that, but we've been talking about some of these issues now for a month or so with the committee. And as I just mentioned on the last slide, we're preparing to move forward with the selection and recruitment for some engineering and architectural services on the dock, some of the dock replacements. So when we talk about the marina, there's always been some confusion with folks about exactly what is the marina, and that's understandable. We've taken some steps recently to really help define exactly what is the marina and what's not in the marina. So everything here in this picture that you see.
Excuse me, Dan, I don't want to interrupt, but we're still on the very first slide,
Well, how is that possible?
or at least that's what I'm seeing. I don't know if everybody else is.
Really?
Yes,
Okay.
sir. Sorry about that.
That's not good. Let's see, take a look at this really quick.
There you are.
Is that better?
Yes, sir.
Well, great. I'm glad you said something, Scott. Let's see here. I will just keep going. Let's see, talking about the marina and exactly what the marina is. So everything you see in blue is what we define as the marina. The marina is run as an enterprise fund. It means all of the revenues and assets that come into that blue zone stay within that blue zone. The orange section, which is kind of the north parking lot area, which is also down on the marina floor, is part of what we've defined as the waterfront zone. And within that zone, although it's not shown on this picture, is also the beach park, Overlook Park 1 and 2, the Van Gasken Park. All of those areas are now general funded activities. So everything that's occurring in that is part of the general fund. And so for the marina itself, that's quite a win that this north parking lot is really part of the city's general fund. It used to be part of the marina. And so, all of the expenditures for the North Bulkhead project that we're getting ready to undertake are part of the city's general fund. And so the marina fund is not paying for that work. So anyway, everything that's in blue is what is defined as the marina. There's waterside assets and landside assets. So changes are coming to the marina, and a lot of these changes are due to just pure necessity. The marina is old. Much of it's over 50 years old, and a lot of the assets are now at or approaching their end of life. Many of the docks and a lot of the infrastructure doesn't meet current day building codes, and much of the materials that were used previously are no longer environmentally acceptable. And so there's a need to replace the docks just purely from their age. There's also some opportunities as we go about doing that to perhaps enhance revenue opportunities for the marina. We'll talk about that tonight. So as part of this condition assessment report that I mentioned, and before I talk about this, I just want to make sure everybody knows that these documents are all available on the marina's website. So you could go and download a PDF of the condition assessment report or any of the documents we're talking about tonight. Scott and Katie and their staff have they have a pretty good idea of what the priority needs are, but it's always good to get a third party opinion to double check that other people are seeing what we're seeing. And so the condition assessment report wasn't a whole lot of surprises here. The overall, most of our infrastructure was given a fair and poor condition. And we're thankful that nothing was categorized by the consultant in the serious or critical categories, but it wouldn't take much for some of our docks to get to some of those serious needs. So when you start looking at the description of what a poor condition assessment is, we're talking advanced deterioration and moderate urgency in the need to address some of the issues. So we really need to get started on rebuilding these docks And now's a good time to start doing that. I'm not going to go through this. You can see in the condition assessment report, they've got tables with each of the docks that they rate the infrastructure on each of the docks, from the float system to the utilities and the piling. So you'll be able to see that in that condition assessment report. So when we got this report, what we started to do with the council committee was to do a triage of the projects and the investments that we need to make, to say, okay, here is the tier 1 projects that we think we need to tackle first based on the condition. And then here's the second set of projects and the third and so on. It was just a way to help us to begin to take an initial shot at prioritizing some of the improvements. And so this work happened earlier on in the year. And since then, we've started to develop our draft marina improvement plan, where we have a project description and a draft scope developed for these projects. And so here you can see on this spreadsheet, at the top, tier 1 projects. So we've begun to kind of list them in order. And as we continue to work on this, we'll fill in the costing numbers and begin to schedule out our best estimate of when we'll actually do some of this work. So just before I hand this over to Mark and his team to start their presentation, just want to give you all an understanding of kind of what's happening over the next month or so. So last week, we did present this report to the City Council, and we're doing that again tonight. The presentation and all the documents are available on the DesMoinesMarina.com at the website. And there is a link on there, an email address, where if you have questions or comments, concerns, you can email those to us and we'll get those. And we do ask, if you can, to include your slip number. That's helpful for us. We have received some comments, and we'll be responding to some of those again tonight. And on the 22nd, next week, we'll discuss some of the feedback that we've received on the phase 2 report with the Municipal Facility Committee. And then we'll take some of that forward to the council on May 6th. So if you haven't had a chance to send in your comments, please do. We do value the feedback and comments that you give us, and we'd appreciate that. So without any further delay, I do want to introduce Mark Bunzel and his team tonight, and they'll walk through the phase 2 assessment and strategy report, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dan. Really appreciate it. We've spent about 1.5 years looking at many aspects of the marina and what's going on with the marina. And we've added to the assessment, most importantly, using our experience of working with many marinas in the region. We've made some recommendations for the function, the purposes, and even the identity for the future of the Des Moines Marina. The goals of the study were, one of the most important was, as Dan mentioned, the marina is 50 years old and the needs were much different, and we'll talk about that 50 years ago, and they've changed. Next slide, please. Thank you. And so our goals were to determine the best mix of slips, and you'll hear us talk about how the types of boats today have changed, and probably no surprise, they've gotten bigger. And we also have looked and studied and determined some recommendations for the upland amenities that would enhance the usability of the marina for visiting boaters, as well as visitors and as well as residents of Des Moines. The marina is a crown jewel of the city. That's been pointed out many times before, and you can prove it to yourself just by going by on any Sunday afternoon, whether it's wintertime or summer, and seeing the number of people who like to come down to the marina, walk along that promenade, look out at the boats, possibly grab a cup of coffee at the quarter deck. So it's a wonderful asset. Next, we wanted to look at the revenue sources and where is the marina making money? Where is it not making money? And where could we do better? And we'll be talking about that tonight also. We also added some recommendations of making it a fun boating experience that, as we dug in deeper with the Des Moines Marina, we realized it really is a crown jewel. Leonard, Lorena, and I have visited the marina before, but we actually came as guests and sat out on the chairs in front of the quarter deck on a Saturday afternoon and brought our boats in, fueled up at the fuel dock, and it's quite a great experience. And to that, we began to draft with the marina staff the long-term plan and how could you do this? Because the challenge you're going to see is it's a bit of a juggling act. It's that proverbial story that the marina is going to stay open while it's being rebuilt. So what do you do with these boats and the logistics of that? And we have some recommendations for that. So the next 50 years, as Dan mentioned, professional consultants, Reed Middleton, and their report is on the internet. And it's interesting, they were the original architects for the marina, and I think they're candidates going forward. So they got to see their work 50 years later. And the answer is it's nearing its end of life. Now, end of life does not mean it's going to collapse or it's in unsafe condition. End of life is determined that it is deteriorating and maintenance cost will continue to increase. And an example of that is the seawall bulkhead is generally failing and needs replacement sooner rather than later. As I pointed out, deferred construction means higher cost due to construction inflation, which we're currently seeing, and the cost of ongoing maintenance, which will go up as the marina staff has to continue to make repairs to areas that are deteriorating completely. And as Dan pointed out, the dock materials, foam, creosote pilings, etc., are no longer environmentally accepted. And a new marina rebuild will have to be with materials that are now acceptable. And we pointed out to the harbor staff as well as the city that the permitting for marinas is now getting extended and is taking more lead time than most people expect. And it can be a 3 to 5 year process for permitting for a marina and a marina rebuild. So there's some issues there. So our findings, again, the dock configuration, as you're going to hear, is not optimal. And we determined that the marina is actually losing money on the smaller slips, 20-foot, 24-foot, and 28-foot slips. Now, tied to that, slightly more than 479 of the 730 slips are those 28 feet and under slips that are no longer economically practical. And we have some recommendations for that. Boats and boating have changed in the 50 years since the marina was designed and constructed. Boats have gotten larger in the Puget Sound area as we have more affluence. And there's quite a bit of demand for moorage for the larger slips. And what Des Moines Marina has seen over the last couple of years is multi-year waiting lists in that category of 34 feet to 60 feet. So the other thing we pointed out when we studied marina rates and compared them to other marinas in the area is that Des Moines is slightly below the market rates during a period where demand is fairly high for moorage. And that points out there's an opportunity for rate increases. And unfortunately, costs are going up. It's a little scary as to how much this marina is going to cost to rebuild it. So we're recommending that the policies and practices be reviewed for establishing the moorage rates. And we're recommending that it go on a market rate basis. Whereas right now within the city code, it specifies cost of living increases and positions the city council to make those determinations. And our recommendation is that Marina staff do that in the future. They've got their ears to the ground and they're staying on top of the Marina rates around the region. Covered moorage, 30 feet and larger, are currently operated at or above 100% of capacity. So there are almost no vacancies, which is terrific. But in that area, 28 feet and under, it's been operating at 81% to 94% of capacity. And part of this is the reason that those slip owners can actually, for certain months of the year, put their boat on a trailer and take it home and not have to pay for the convenience of having an in-water moorage. Open moorage slips, non-covered slips, 28 feet and larger, operated at or above 100%. And then the open slips, 28 feet and under, operated at 64 to 84%. So that's again pointing to this category above. So the question came up, what's the right revenue mix of slips for Des Moines? So we put together this chart that's showing the slips and how much they bring in for 2018, 2019, and 2020. And then a projection of if we do a rebuild of the configuration, favoring the slips 30 feet and above, what that revenue could look like. So you can see that we go from 3 million up to 3.08 million. But if we add dry storage, and we're going to come back to this, that rather than the sheds that are currently on the marina floor that are single story, a dry stack storage facility of 240 slips could be generating an extra $3 million in revenue. And as you can see, in terms of total revenue at the very bottom, it could bring another $1 million a year into the marina that can be used to pay for construction, to pay for debt service on construction of new docks, et cetera. So we're looking at a reconfiguration, which you can see in that top area, where we're going to take it from 730 slips down to 532 slips. But that reduction will not have a major reduction in revenue, but we'll be able to utilize that space better. And also cutting down that number of slips will reduce the maintenance cost and the construction cost in the rebuild of the marina. Next slide. Okay, so what are some of the cost challenges? And they are significant. The rebuild process, by nature of the logistics, as well as the finances, will need to be done in phases. And ideally, this is 3 docks per season. And the reason for 3 docks per season is we need to be moving boats around during this, but also there are only certain months where you can do dock construction. And that's due to regulations regarding what they call fish windows, when fish are spawning, reproducing, salmon protection, et cetera. So it works out to be about 3 docks per season. The staggering number is the cost to rebuild the marina could be $30 to $50 million. And that would be based upon the timing and also that dock replacement. The major part of that difference in the $30 to $50 million is a decision that has not yet been made of covered slips versus uncovered slips. Des Moines Marina, over the last 50 years, has had this incredible gift of covered slips. And covered slips, as you'll hear, are, we're told by the experts in the industry that they can cost 80% to 100% more to build. In essence, we were told most marinas, almost all marinas, cannot afford to build covered moorage. And I should put out that covered moorage used to be very important 50 years ago when the industry was still building wood boats. And wood boats enjoyed that protection of being out of the sun in a covered moorage. Today's fiberglass materials are much better standing up to the weather, but we still have a number of people in Des Moines and in the Des Moines Marina who really desire covered moorage. There are also permitting issues and that come into this, and we cannot say that this marina rebuild will be able to be done with covered moorage at this point. We're going to do more surveying work with the tenants and others to determine the demand for covered moorage. And that demand will be factored in with what would be the cost of that covered moorage slip. And it is significant. The other challenge we have is that the city currently has insufficient funds for a complete rebuild of the docks and infrastructure. That money's just not sitting around. Now, what we do potentially have as an opportunity is $7 million of bond debt will soon be retired and be available. But that's the first 7 million. And then beyond that, we're looking at it that the rest may have to be funded from the marina revenues, requiring 20 years or more, or new sources of revenue. For example, we'll be talking about an adaptive multi-purpose building on the marina floor that could be a source of revenue to be paying for this rebuild. We haven't completely determined whether that's going to be enough. The other area of opportunity that solves two problems is dry storage. Dry storage assists with the logistics, and it can provide the needed revenue for that rebuild. Dry storage is a viable option to accommodate boats 30 feet and under. And as we pointed out earlier in our determination today, in the water moorage, we're not getting the same level of return that we can for larger boats in the water. So to provide an option for those boats 30 foot and under, a dry stack storage unit could actually be the answer. But of course, we would have to invest to build that. And dry stack storage can cost $3 to $4 million for a dry stack storage facility. And as Dan mentioned, in the next phase, as we go out and look at architectural and mechanical engineering, then we'll be able to get more solid numbers as to what these look like and then determine whether it makes sense. We are comforted by the fact that dry storage is in high demand in Puget Sound with facilities in Lake Union, Edmonds, Anacortes, Tacoma, and all of those are doing well. They're practically fully occupied or fully occupied and are typically profitable. So it really is a viable option that needs to be looked at for a good utilization of the water space and the land space, and stacking them makes that. The current dry storage is the 72 sheds that are in the marina floor, and they cover boats only up to 20 feet. They're old. They occupy a great deal of space on the marina grounds. And we were surprised to see that the rental rates for those sheds are comparable to a car storage shed further inland at some of the storage facilities that are around the Seattle area. So we're not charging a premium for that convenience of being next to the water for something specialized like boat storage. Next slide. So the marina rebuild process would first require complete replacement of the seawall. And then we're recommending that docks M and N begin as a start out towards the fuel dock. And we want to point out that part of the new standards for marina docks is that they are required to offer more light transmission, either grading on open moorage or on covered moorage. They require ceiling structures like the J dock, which had where the fire was, where they put in areas that would allow more sunlight to come through and sunlight to get to the water and the fish below. So the permitting, the mitigation cost, and construction cost for covered moorage may be too high, resulting in a decision that you may all have to make for a complete open moorage. And I know from our meetings with the community, to be honest, we're spoiled today by the amount of covered moorage that we currently have. It may not be feasible to do that either due to permitting requirements or just the complete cost. So in addition, in the beginning, we see M&N dock and then D dock. And we see D dock being rebuilt and repositioned to allow a second launch area down in that corner of the marina. And we also have to reposition it and eliminate a couple docks because we're going to have wider fairways. So we can't just build bigger slips. We have to have room for the boats to come in, make the turn, and get into their particular slip. And we've allowed for that with some of our initial work, but this is something that the marina architects that we would all be working with will have to allow for. We also want to point out that the new electrical systems for docks require something called ELCI protected power. And to put it simply, what this means is you're not getting stray current into the water. Stray current can kill swimmers or if somebody falls into the water. And so they're doing new standards that cut off the power whenever it senses that that something is tied to the water, causing that danger. So in essence with this, we see reconfiguring the docks where the slips are 30 feet and under and larger. And by reconfiguring, we'll have less slips, but about the same revenue. And this slide begins to show you the current configuration of the marina and the percentage of the slips. And here you can see when we did that analysis of where is the marina making its money, those smaller slips were not making their money, but look at the percentage of total all the way over on the left, where it's showing in the 20-foot slips, that's only 5% of the marina, that's not so bad. But the next area, 24 and 28-foot slips, it's 26 and 34% of the marina. So what we're recommending is a different configuration that's favoring those larger. And this breaks that down where you can see the slips that are eliminated and then the larger slips that are there. So we would be taking it from 730 slips down to a more efficient 532 slips. Similar level of revenue, and but it would have less maintenance costs by having less slips. Next slide. We have two slides here I'm going to show you, and these are really for discussion purposes. They are not showing a recommendation of a configuration. So this is what the marina looks like today with the buildings that are there on the dry storage stack buildings, the harbor office, and of course Anthony's all the way over to the left, and S3 seafood response or sea life response, rehabilitation and research. So a very vibrant marina, but no longer meeting the needs or the efficiency to do this. Next slide. Now what this shows is we've eliminated a number of docks to allow for larger slips. And we've made an assumption that if you come back and say, well, we'd really like to have at least 40% of the marina covered. And that's what those dark blocks over the docks are showing. And that's just a proposal at this stage. It's not in stone or anything else, but this is an idea of what it could look like. What you see above the docks on land is the adaptive purpose building, which is number 11. And this is one of the most ambitious things of the marina going forward that potentially offers tremendous opportunity and a lot of challenges in terms of its design And we're hoping to pull some very bright minds into this that would allow us to come up with a building that would serve multiple purposes. And it would be the marina offices, 2 to 3 stories in a tiered step-down approach to maximize the views and provide the most efficient use of the space. It'd be where the dry storage sheds are now located. And it would include the harbor offices, bathrooms, new bathrooms, showers, laundry, restaurants, specialty shops, marine-related business offices, and we're hoping to fit into that building some dry boat storage. So to the side of that, towards the middle of the marina, we see special event space to include the farmers market, which seems to be well liked and a real asset to the marina. And that space may be used for other functions when the farmers market is not running. So this adaptive purpose building we see as being able to use this structure to serve this multiple needs. Next. So the recommended next steps are to begin the design and architecture process. As Dan said, the city is going out with a request for qualifications to some of the firms that are experts in this area. Many of them we already talked with, already met with them, and we're able to get some of their best ideas from just walking around the marina. By the way, we also talked to the current marina tenants that are all there and talked about their needs and their vision for the future and what they're looking for. And many of you may have noticed the pretty row of Ranger tugs and cutwater boats that are on the docks. And this was as a result of discussions we started with that company about how they could better use this facility. And they turned right around and leased 300 feet of dock space. And it's been a huge success for them, terrific opportunity. They call it a game changer in their business. And we think there's more opportunities with Ranger Tug and other companies like that to locate their sales centers within the Des Moines Marina. We're hoping that the permits for an adaptive purpose building on land move faster than the permits for the structures over the water. We'd like to get that building in place to begin earning revenue because that revenue could be supporting the dock rebuild purpose that will go out over multiple years. That major decision I referred to earlier is this evaluation of open versus covered moorage. Again, we've heard there's a tremendous amount of demand for this. We'd like to do a little deeper marketing of this to talk to tenants and see if they're willing to pay that higher price that's going to be required to support a covered moorage. And when we talk about that higher price is not just due to the cost of construction, but in that price, we're going to have a factor for rebuild so that we're building the funds starting right away with the new marina going forward so that 50 years from now, the funds are in place for the next rebuild. And so we see that as being important. We see incorporating the boat storage space and options where people can work on their boats if they're in a dry storage facility, either on land or temporary areas on the water with a dock that they can be at in between the time their boat is launched and when it's time to leave the dock on a passage. And then we want to take the steps to begin to pre-market that building, space in that building, first of all, to the existing tenants and to see whether they want expanded space there, and then to new tenants so that we can actually judge that opportunity and feel fairly confident of that revenue opportunity. So that's what we have come to a conclusion after extensive study and talking to many of you about what your needs are and interests are in the future of the Des Moines Marina. We've gone through a transition, as you can tell, from a marina that 50 years ago really met the needs of the community. But if you step back 50 years ago, you may recall that boats back then, not only were they shorter, but a lot of people, they may not have had as much horsepower. They may have had their boat on a trailer and used the sling lift to take their boats off the trailer and into the water at Des Moines. But this was a way that marina 50 years ago really met its needs. Now with the rebuild is an opportunity to build this for the next 50 years. And as I mentioned earlier, what we've seen is the trend and the demand right now and the waiting list are for those larger boats. And those larger boats tend to spend more money in a community, which brings more sales to the community, more taxable retail sales. The sale of boats in the marina also brings the community more taxable retail sales, which can be used for multiple purposes, as well as supporting all aspects of the marina. So as Dan mentioned, this is all starting to roll forward into the next phase. Our purpose of presenting this tonight is to get your feedback. Tell us, challenge us if need be. Tell us what you'd like to see more of. We have a tremendous amount of data that we raised together with studying the data from the marina staff, as well as other marinas in the Puget Sound area and the entire Inside Passage, going up through Canada and up into Alaska. So we look forward to continuing to work with you on this, and we look forward to your additional questions. Dan?
Thanks, Mark. Just a quick question for Katie and Scott. I know we had originally planned 5:30 to 6:30. Are we good if it goes a little bit longer? I know the DMMA has a board meeting at 7. We want to stop well before that, but
We're
okay.
fine.
Okay, let me a second here. All right. Scott, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So I just really quick, I shared with you earlier that kind of the rest of April and early May will be collecting and responding to feedback, questions, comments, concerns on the phase 2 report that you've heard tonight, and it's available on our website. We'll also be doing some preliminary engineering work, primarily developing a scope of work with an engineer for M&N docks specifically. I'm going to talk about that here in just a moment. Our plan is, after we've kind of collected a lot of the feedback that you'll give us, we'll put together our draft Marina master plan. We hope to issue that in late July. We plan to have stakeholder outreach, review and comment sessions, hopefully in person by then. On that draft, we will then modify that and issue a final draft in September, with the goal of having our public hearings on the master plan and adoption of that in November. So that's kind of our preliminary schedule. Again, all the documents are on the Marina website. Here's the email address where you can send comments to us. I do want to address a couple of things very, very quickly here. I know you heard some stuff from Mark about covered moorage. We've heard loud and clear from the boaters that they love and cherish covered moorage. It is an asset. There's not very much of it on the Puget Sound. And we probably have the lion's share of it, to be honest with you. And so there's a lot of value to that for the boaters, and we've heard that and we understand that. We will do our very best moving forward to fight for covered moorage with permitting agencies. I know that from what we've experienced on the North Bulkhead project, it will be very challenging to get covered moorage permitted, but we will do everything we can to provide as much as we can. But it has to be economically feasible. And the first thing is we actually have to get the permits for it. So we've talked about M and N docks, and the question could be, well, why these two docks? Primarily, these were the two docks that were in the worst shape in the condition assessment report. And so we thought, well, we can go ahead and move forward with the replacement of these docks now. Both of these docks are facilitate larger boats, 40 and 50-foot boats. So we're not really changing the slip mix as we go to replace these docks. We likely would replace these docks in kind. A lot of the upland infrastructure is already in place. In fact, if you can look at this photo here in the upper right, you can see that the promenade and seawall has already been replaced in front of these docks. So this just seemed like a natural fit to start the work on. One of the things that we plan to do is use this as kind of a test with the permitting agencies, just how much of this can we get covered moorage, and once we understand that, we'll also have a better understanding of the costs of that, and we can see are boaters willing to pay that cost. One of the things that we've heard from folks is that, hey, as the marina redevelops and as the marina floor and the downtown become more vibrant and more attractive for destination boating, what are we going to do about guest moorage and attracting more day use boaters to the marina? And so one of the things that we would probably do is to shift all of the covered moorage of M and N over to one dock, probably M dock. That would allow us to, in the future, if there's demand, to increase guest moorage on what's now N dock. And so that would give us some flexibility there. It also is pretty inefficient having docks that are half covered and some that are like you see here in the picture. So if we have one dock that consists of all covered moorage, that's a more efficient design. So that's something we're thinking about as we move forward on that. You heard Mark talk about the dry stack storage in this, wanting to, as we move to the larger boats, we want to be able to retain the smaller boats that get displaced at the marina. And so we do want to look at a facility where we could house stack storage of boats. But we also want to be sensitive to the aesthetics of that. There's competing interests of the marina floor, and people care about what they look at. And so we've got some ideas about how we can do that. And as Mark mentioned, we have this multi-purpose or adaptive purpose building that we've talked about, maybe looking at where we could accommodate dry stack storage, perhaps a sales office, year-round farmers market, restaurants, other leasable space in this building, so that it's not just the storage of boats, it's meeting multiple uses and interest for the city. Now, the land where this building would be built is owned by the marina. And so the marina would build this building with the understanding that it would collect more revenue than it costs to operate and build it. And that additional revenue then could be a funding source that can help us with tier 2 and tier 3 dock replacements and other infrastructure replacements on the marina floor and on the water. So this isn't a new idea. So here's some renderings that were put together over the last couple of years with the Holmes Group and Skylabs, and the idea of having the marina steps. And on the right, you'll see there's kind of a building shown kind of at the foot or the base of the hill there. You can see that the the roof of that doesn't come up and block views for the condos. You can also see storage facilities over here on the far right of the screen. Here's another image that was developed. You can kind of see the same concept where you have this dark olive facility that's right at the base of the condos with a market that's shown where the dry sheds currently are at. More recently, this was one of the latest images that was produced when we had some public feedback, and you can see all the blue dots. You know, there was a lot of interest from the public of having kind of a meandering walkway down through this area, and a farm market, outdoor market. And so what, you know, we think that we can accommodate multiple uses here where we can have dry stack storage that essentially nobody sees because it's inside the building at the base of the hill, and we can accommodate other uses and restaurants and become part of the city's vision, but using the marina property to gain revenue for the marina. So Mark touched on this a little bit, and I just want to mention why is this so important? The marina needs additional revenue sources to do capital investments. It's just that simple. It doesn't have to be the multi-purpose structure, but it has to be something else, if not. The marina, as Mark mentioned, we have some debt service that will expire at the end of the year. We pay annual debt service on some 2012 bonds for capital investments that were made on the marina. That debt service is part of the annual expenditures of the marina. And when the loan is paid off, we can roll that debt service forward, reissue new debt. We think after talking with bond counsel that we can get 6 to 7 million for the current amount of debt that we're paying on. And that would allow us to do M&N docks and possibly another dock. And that debt then would be locked up for another 20 years. And so you can see that the issue is, great, we did 3 docks and we have a whole bunch more to do, but we don't have any new revenue to pay for the expenditures until that debt is paid off. And so that's obviously at a conflict with the condition assessment report that's showing that in 10 to 15 years, all of the docks will need to be serviced. So we've put together this graphic. It may be a little difficult to read, but this is showing it's not all inclusive of the revenue that we generated in 2019 from guest moorage and all of the docks, from the dry sheds, our CSR lease, and some of the other leases that we have. We chose 2019. 2020 was a bit of an anomaly with COVID. And so 2019 was more typical of what we've been collecting in revenue. And so you can see on the docks here, D, E, F, and G, the revenues are about half of what we collect on M, N, and L dock and K dock. And that gets exactly to the point that Mark was making on revenue. So if we can resize those docks to bigger boats and not lose revenue in the marina, and then capture the displaced smaller boats at the marina in a dry stack storage, that's revenue that can then help us to fund additional improvements at the marina. One last point, and then we're going to answer a few questions that we've received. The North Bulkhead project, the North Lot. Finally, after much work and permitting over the last 3 or 4 years, this is going to construction. 2 weeks from today, we advertise this for bids. We'll open bids mid-May, and construction will begin this summer. Obviously, that's going to mean impacts to the north parking lot. And the shaded area here in red is an approximate work zone for the contractor. And so you can see that the parking and access to the marina in the north lot in that waterfront zone is going to be somewhat impacted during the construction of the bulkhead. But this is good news moving forward that we had some grants that we got for this, and the city's general fund is covering the rest. Phase one of this project starts here at the entrance to the parking lot by the old Wasson House, and it comes all the way down and about halfway down on the west side where that finger dock is located. We have funding for that much of it for sure. We're hoping to do what we're calling phase two, which would actually continue the piling and bulkhead replacement all the way down and over to kind of the where the access ramp is, where the improvements end here by the corner. And that phase two work would also replace the breakwater here with that project. So we're actually going to get a bid from the contractor to do all of that, and then evaluate funding options to see if we can do all of that work with one contract. So with that, that's essentially what I have. I think it'd be good, Mark, I think we have enough time to answer a few of the questions or themes that we got.
Scott, do you want to go ahead and pose some of those questions?
Oh, I think Katie has the list, but I'm not sure.
I have the list. I apologize. I will bring those up.
Now, these are questions that we received from the presentation last week to the City Council. And again, as Dan said, you're encouraged to send in your questions, and we'll either answer them publicly in a future meeting or definitely get a response to you. Some of these we can't answer at this time. This step that we need to go through next in terms of the engineering and more accurate information in terms of what we'd be building and the cost to build it will be necessary to answer some of these questions.
Mark, I know one of the questions that we got had to do with, and you mentioned it earlier, the logistics as we go to rebuild docks, just moving boats around and doing that while the marina is still open. What are your thoughts on that?
So it is one of the biggest challenges, and what happens in dock rebuilding is the docks are built off-site, and they're floated down to the marina and put in place. Now, what happens before that is you need all of the boats on a particular dock. Let's just say end dock right now. They would all have to go other places. Some of them could be brought up on land, which would mean taking some of the parking lot area and blocked. And quite frankly, those owners, and this happened to me in my marina this year, I utilized that time when I had to get out of my slip for them to rebuild the slip. And this was the Anacortes Marina in Anacortes. I scheduled my maintenance for that month. And so the boats, I had to find another place to go for a month. And it was my responsibility. I contracted with one of the yards. My boat went into the yard, and I had my annual maintenance done, in this case, in September, October, or actually for a month, the month of October, instead of waiting till spring. So this is also why we're recommending with the dry stack storage, when we're dealing with the smaller slips, those boat owners will be offered an opportunity to then move into the dry stack storage, which should be less expensive than in the water storage, and begin to utilize that space. But it is a logistical balancing act, which Scott just can't wait to handle. But it's going to require a lot of cooperation from the tenants for that month, and it typically takes a month to pull the old creosote pilings out, put in new pilings, float the new docks in, and then they put the electrical on those docks, and then invite the tenants for those slips to come back to their brand new slip.
I know another question that that we got, and I don't know if we're prepared to kind of address part of it tonight, but with the dry stack storage and you know, potentially a couple of hundred smaller boats in that, what do we need? It seems like we'll need a fairly sizable staging area, both on land and in the water, as we move boats in and out of dry stack storage for weekend trips or things like that.
Yeah, we'll have to dedicate, let's talk in the water first, some linear dock space for boats to go when they're being placed, after they're placed in the water, where they can be tied up to that dock, where the owner of that boat can then load their gear on board and then go from there. Same thing when they come back after the weekend. That's where they would put the boat, and the marina, the crew would then bring that boat over to the lift and lift it and put it into its stacked storage space. Some of the dry storage yards will also have a temporary space on land with a rack where the boat can be put in that, where the boat can be loaded. For example, if they're going to go off for a multi-week vacation, or if the owner needs to do some maintenance on the boat, where that boat can be worked on within the rack and be handled that way. And the beauty part is properly done, an owner can call ahead, the marina can schedule when they're going to have the boat in the water, and let's say it's a busy Saturday morning, and some of the boats can be ready to go in the water, some of the boats can be ready to go on land and can be quickly put in the water, theoretically, if scheduled right, before the owner shows up, so that they're ready to go.
Did the layout and configuration that you've kind of and the slip going from 730 down to 530, did you accommodate space in that for some of this on the water?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we did. Is it enough space? We're going to relook at this again. This is always tough. How much space do you allow for that? That's non-revenue producing space, because you keep it open for, for that temporary storage. And so, do you plan for that busy Saturday morning at 10 a.m.? Yes, but within certain constraints. Yeah.
And the idea of it being non-revenue generating is because the revenue, that's part of the service of being in dry storage, is that, we have a place for you when you want to use your boat. That's
correct. And we would factor that revenue factor into the rates for the dry storage. Now, often, the common practice is that a dry storage facility will charge for an in and out of the lifts that are putting the boat in. But in most cases, in most usage of it, it's less costly than in the water moorage.
I might add too that many times the dry stack storage has the value-added services on the end of the trip too, cleaning the boat, flushing the engine out. So sometimes they'll add that service as well.
So we did in the planning process for this meet with CSR, and it's a business opportunity that they would consider. There are some marinas where the marina staff, in this case, city employees would do those services for fee. So there's a couple different ways in terms of setting the policy or how those services are set. The idea being is it could be an outside party and not impacting city employees and marina staff.
Okay. I had maybe one other thought. Katie, did you have something?
There was another one that was, the question was where the data was specifically received from and using and arriving at that recommendation for that split mix that was presented.
Interesting that you asked the question, Katie. Katie was the source from the Marina records and the history of the Marina of a lot of that data based on actual revenue figures and actual occupancy records. And Leonard, do you want to add anything to that?
No, again, compliments to Katie and the Marina for providing some excellent data, historical data. The other one, speaking a little bit towards the one of the slides that you had, Mark, where you were talking about the different levels of occupancy, I think is what you termed it, and that was based on revenue base. So it was a measure, a percentage of the revenue that was received in the different sized marina slips currently. So it was a factoring not only of occupancy, but also of the rate and whether there was an adjustment on the rate. And the other thing I'd mentioned when we were accumulating the data, there was data that came in at over 100%. And you'd immediately ask yourself, how can you have more than 100%? And it has to do with the 10% overhang that the marina currently allows. And a couple of statements with that. One is that currently, because of the overhang, you currently have slip boats in slips now that need larger slips. In other words, they overhang. So there's a need already for slips that are bigger than what you have. And that also accounts for the over 100% occupancy and revenue that you received on the slips.
So they're allowed to overhang by 10 feet,
10%.
but they will the marina will charge for that 10 feet.
10% of the size of the slip.
Okay, I see we've got just a couple minutes left here, and one thing I think would be worth addressing, and coming back to covered moorage. In the report, you're suggesting going to a 40% covered moorage, 60% open moorage. And I think that there's a concern that that's a hard and fast number. And I don't know that that's what you had in mind specifically. It's kind of an approximation based on what we think we can permit and the expense. Is that fair?
That's correct, Dan.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think
I was
that's
going to say,
important.
I could add to that exactly, because the number, we were looking for a number. So some number that was representative that said that there is, again, only for illustration purposes. So we had no idea. We had no idea what would be permitted, and also what you, the marina folks, would want. So we picked a number just so that we could do some estimating and put something out there. So it was truly a number that was picked a little bit to illustrate what could be there, but not representative of what should be there.
Okay, so I think so in response to that, I think the idea would be is if we could get the permits to do it all and the boaters were willing to pay the rates, we could theoretically do what we have now.
Yeah, and the part that we're concerned about in coming up with a projection for that rate is, again, that other factor that we were told is when we asked for what, we know what docks cost and what it costs to rebuild a dock. We weren't given any hard and fast numbers for a covered dock. We would ask for them in the next phase, but they told us figure 80% to 100% premium to build covered moorage. And you may ask why. Well, one, covered moorage requires docks on both sides of the slip, and that's to support the roof structure over the boats. So it adds quite a bit. We also don't know whether it's going to require sprinklers for fire suppression, and sprinkling a covered dock can add quite a bit to the cost to plumb it and service it. It needs to be serviced on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So we're
Okay,
trying to put all the caveats out there that covered mortgage is really a premium. And we're afraid, we're questioning whether the tenants can actually afford it or will want to afford it.
The other one that I wanted to add, the covered mortgage, keep in mind that sailboats obviously can't fit into the covered mortgage. So
Yeah.
if you do 100% covered mortgage, you're self-defining a
Yeah.
little bit of what the marina will look like in terms of mix of power and sail.
yeah. But I wasn't suggesting that. I'm just saying, making the theoretical comment that, you know, hey, if we could get the permits and people were willing to pay the price, yeah, we could do it. I don't know that that'll be the case, but theoretically, that's where I was going. I think the nice thing about the way that we're, you know, financially going to be able to do the work, and as you mentioned, Mark, you know, you do certain number of docks each season or each period of time, you know, we'll be able to do kind of take a temperature check of the proportion of covered moorage that we're providing, and assuming we get the permits, and the demand for that covered moorage at the rates, at the moorage rates to cover the costs of that. So we'll be able to kind of dip our toe in the water, so to speak, here with M and N dock, and that will give us some good data moving forward on covered moorage on some of the other docks as we go to replace those. So that was helpful. I just wanted to make sure that that we understood and that people understood that the 60-40 was just an approximation. There's nothing hard and fast that says we're locked into only 40% covered moorage. That's not what that's intended to show.
That's right. Good point.
Okay. Well, I know we're getting close here. We probably need to wrap up. Mark and Leonard and Lauren, I really appreciate your time that you put into this. I know you're getting ready to do some more touring here, so we wish you well on that. And folks, again, go to the Marina website and send us comments and feedback on the reports and what you've heard tonight, or any questions you have about the infrastructure work we're planning at the Marina. We do need your input and we appreciate it. So with that, we'll sign off.
Thanks.